one of the things that's emerged in my activism over the last year, at least in the reception that I get, and when I go meet people, and when I get recognized by strangers on the street or at events, and they come up to me, it used to be like a lot of, hey, Adam, I loved, you did the shotgun thing, or I loved the dancing thing, or I loved your cursing protest, or, I loved, like some specific part of my activism that spoke to an issue that they care about. But what I'm getting now a lot more is, Adam, it's really beautiful to see how you've evolved. It's really amazing to see that your activism has changed. And I'm so proud of this. I'm not big on pride as a concept, but as a measure of my activism, to have always been open to change. And, I think it's a great tragedy of the human condition that a lot of us, especially as public figures, come out with a worldview and a statement and, a set of positions or opinions on things. And if you change them, you're a flip-flopper, and, you get blasted for that, as opposed to being a conscientious, open-minded human being who's willing to change and knows how to admit that they're wrong.
Right.
And over the course of 9 years of my activism, I think I've become, at least for the people who know me, kind of a poster kid for that. And that is like way more meaningful to me than anything else, because I never even thought that would be like my issue or my thing, of being someone who can be a public figure and come out and say, I have a worldview and I have a plan and I want to do this and let's do this, and go, oh crap, I got a better one now. Or, like, hey, I've seen the way in this. And for a lot of people, just to give, so people understand what I'm talking about, who aren't into activism or, not familiar with what I do, I'll connect it to something that I think everybody experiences in just being engaged in politics or in society at all. And it's that as you wake up, as your awareness increases, you become angrier and angrier and angrier. The more the more there is to be pissed off about.
Yeah, exactly.
And some of us get through that.
Yeah, some people get kind of consumed by it almost.
Yeah, and you see the people who are not able to move past it get burned out in their activism.
Right.
And for some of us, it's not getting burned out, it's coming to a point of acceptance. And it's kind of a Zen thing, everything is right in the universe. If I'm not, I can take my anger and not channel it, not drive it, not stoke it into some, misguided thing, but I can acknowledge it and be motivated by it and move on centered.
Right. The thing
peace of mind.
The thing I always tell myself is, if it wasn't this, it'd just be something else. So there's no sense in getting too hung up on the fact that, there's problems in the world. There shouldn't be problems in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's always going to be relatively some kind of problem, whatever world that you're in, you know what I mean? So yeah, you have to kind of accept it and, do what you can about it, I think. I think that's really commendable that you get that like how important that is, to be able to admit that maybe you're wrong, or admit that you've just, changed your opinion about something. And then, like you said, it doesn't mean that, the whole negative connotation of being a flip-flopper is ridiculous. I mean, where a flip-flopper would make sense as being negative would be if you're just lying about your opinion on something. Like some politicians, right, I'm pretty sure, do that. Like, they originally thought this, and they still do, but now they're lying about it just to get votes. But changing your opinion because you've learned more, I mean, that's part of being human, I think.
Yeah, or going back and forth, and that's when you go, wait a second, there's no, this is political pandering, there's nothing deeper attached to this. But, one of the things that has allowed me to do this is not just that so many people have supported me in my activism, with donations and their time and their energy and making it possible to do what I do, but that I think that people are looking for that, and they know that when there's, that when someone like me who has absolute confidence in what I'm doing, because I know for myself right now it's the best thing that I can do to live well, to provide value to the world, to fight for freedom, I'm not afraid to change. It takes the ego out of it, and it's been awesome to be able to unintentionally share that experience with so many people.
Right, and it's got to be, I'm impressed with how you can find a, because I'm not an activist. I mean, I like to try to make a difference in the ways that I can, but I mean, you're a legit activist, and it's always impressive to me how you can find a balance between still seeming to have a somewhat of a normal life, but also caring so much and trying to do so much, for all these different.
No, that's not true. What normal life? What are you talking about? I don't want no normal life.
Yeah.
Screw that. And I have what is, I hope should be a more normal life, but right now, far from it. With what I'm doing here, building a homestead.
Yeah.
In northern Arizona, building a house for myself. But I mean, when you decide, you don't like really. There's no job applications for being an activist.
Right.
I think of you as an activist because of the way you engage with your media production, of activism. I mean, you come with a worldview, you come with an intent, you come with a desire to help people in a way outside of traditional economic interaction. And when you, I mean, who wants a normal life anymore? I mean, this is the thing about fear and change, is that everybody has these expectations from other people of how they're going to live, and it's a fundamental denial of your own freedom, which is respect for your own individual will, that part of you that makes you uniquely you, that has its own wants and desires, and how to fulfill this opportunity of life. And so to say that I'm going to live a normal life is to say I'm not going to be free. I'm going to be my life is going to be dictated by what my parents' generation did. My life is going to be dictated by the establishment's expectations of me.
Well, I guess maybe normal life was a bad way to put it. I meant more like you manage it well. You know what I mean? Because it seems like a pretty tough job to me. All the stuff that you do and all the eyeballs looking at you and scrutinizing you and stuff like that. It just I couldn't live that life. So I'm impressed that someone like you can do it. Is all I'm saying.
Well, it has its challenges. But I want to be really clear about this. It's not work. I don't do it because it's hard. People say thank you for your work, and it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And what seems like would be really, really hard to me is waking up at age 40, stuck in a career in a 9-to-5 job with a mortgage and a car payment and bills, and realizing that you're a slave, and that not only that, you're stuck because you volunteered, because you signed up, because you asked for all these commitments, and you can escape this. But it's like, when you, and obviously you're of a far more free mentality than the average person, so I don't want to cast aspersions on you, but when you, John, say, you're living like, a challenging life as an activist, I think of this as comparing someone who's in prison to someone who's outside of prison. Like the person inside the prison goes, man, I've got, on the outside, you have to have a job, and you have to worry about feeding yourself and your family and clothing yourself and shelter. And I'm here in jail, and oh my gosh, it's so easy being in jail. I have all my meals provided for me. I have free health care. I don't have to work a job. I can sit around all day. Yeah, being in jail is easy. Put me in jail. That sounds like the easy life. And, as soon as you step out and you look at it from the other perspective, you go, oh, wait a second. No, that's the easy way. Yeah. Being free is way more easy than being enslaved.
It's true. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, obviously being in jail definitely has, some challenges, that's for sure. But it's true, like being the idea of, because I did that kind of thing for a while, being stuck behind a 9-to-5 job, just trying to make enough money to scrape by, and just living kind of the standard cardboard cutout life. It's it's not fun. It feels like you're getting nowhere fast.
Yeah, that's hard. Man, that's a hard life.
It is, and it feels like you don't have control over yourself. Like you've got so many schedules, and you got to. I mean, of course, you know, like you are too. I mean, I'm pretty busy. I have schedules. I have places I have to be. But the thing is, I do those by choice. Like I could really cancel almost any of those at any time.
Mm-hmm.
There's not some boss that's gonna, you know, tell me what I need to do or fire me or anything like that. You know. So yeah, I mean, that's the dream right there. Is being able to support yourself and operate within society and have freedom. You know, be able to do what you want. Make your own rules and your own schedule to an extent, and that's something.
I mean, I
was gonna say.
I have a lot.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, I was gonna say.
Just to bounce off that, I have a lot of obligations that I've taken on myself, but you know, I wake up every day, and I get to do whatever the heck I want.
Yeah, that's great, and that's something. What I was gonna say is I remember when I read in your book about. There was a chapter in there where you're talking about how sovereignty over your own body, you know, is one of the biggest aspects of freedom. I think that's pretty hard to argue with. You know, if we don't own the words that come out of our mouth and, you know, the things that we put in our body and whatever we decide to do to ourselves, like, you know, how can we say that we're free? You know, that was the point you made in your book. I think it's great. But I think
you can argue with me about that, but if you do, I'll make you feel pretty silly.
Yeah, I think anyone who tries to argue that point would feel pretty silly. I think where it starts to get hairy.
That's not true though. That's not true because people argue that point all the time. In fact, that is 90+% of the modern conversation of politics. How do we manage this ownership of other people? You know, like we don't really own ourselves. The collective owns us, and if we vote and the powers that be, blah blah blah, then you know we submit.
Right. Yeah, especially with like the drug war and stuff like that. I think where it gets hairy is we own our bodies, and the drug war definitely steps on that in a big way. But then when you come into things like land and property rights and ownership of other things, like that's where it gets kind of hairy, you know, where people try to say we can have this, we can't be here, we can't be there. Like you can't just let people run around, and you can't just let people come in and live in the White House necessarily. But, you know, so it's like, where do you find, you know what I mean? Like that's, to me, is a tough one. Where do you find that balance?
Oh man, you just unpacked like so much for me. I have like three hour long responses to what you just said. If I may,
okay.
How did we get so long into the conversation without me mentioning the book? Holy crap! Freedom.
I know. I mentioned it first before you. Look at that.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you got to it first. I mean, you're perfect pitch man. I appreciate that. Wingman for me.
Well, I liked it, man.
Freedom.
Well, I like the book. You know, it was cool.
Well, I appreciate that. I started writing it when I was in jail in D.C. for the shotgun civil disobedience, and wrote it to be the easiest way to take someone from zero to I get it, to embracing freedom in 100 pages in a 3-hour audiobook. They're all free in every digital format possible on my website, thefreedomline.com. And it's been amazing since we talked a little over a year ago. Maybe it was about a year ago now.
I think so, something like that, yeah.
The book is now in its 4th printing. We just got another 30,000 copies here.
Wow.
We've got over 2 million downloads. I get emails now every day, consistently every day, from people who say, dude, I just finished reading your book for the 4th time, or listening to the audiobook for the 6th time, and I'm ready. I get it. I'm ready. Let's do this. And it's really amazing to see that. The second hour-long response, I'll get down to 30 seconds here. What you said about, you know, that self-ownership is really clear when it comes to your body and the natural rights of your own will, but that when it comes to property rights, that's where it gets fuzzy. And I don't want to say it gets fuzzy, but there is a certain subjective standard that is already all around us in society about what constitutes a standard of respect for other people's bodies and their space and their stuff. And a lot of people trip up on this point when they look at the objective of a stateless society. You know, and at first a lot of people go, wait, but without government, you know, who's going to pay for socialized medicine? And then they go, oh, wait, that's a bad idea because free markets. And then they go, wait, but without government, you know, who's going to provide for the public safety like the police? And then they go, oh, wait, private security forces always do a better job anyway. Right. And then, well, who's going to build the roads? And, that is kind of a silly argument that's easy to dismiss with just a little bit of reasoning.
But no one's going to get around to building the roads if we don't have them.
Yeah, right. But the thing about property in that future scenario of a world without government that we're really rapidly approaching at this point is that there is going to be a whole other conversation. Instead of it being about politics and fighting over the unethical policies of a violent monopoly called government, it's going to be, how do we establish the social standards of respect for property? Like, for me, I didn't know about this until I got out here in Arizona, and the answer is like really, really simple. I just bought 11 acres and a 10-piece, and where I am in Arizona, the county sets a standard when they subdivide properties for what is an appropriate easement or a setback. So what is an easement? As in, an easement is someone else's access to someone else's property.
Right.
So, like, if you have property next to mine or all around mine, it would clearly be wrong for you to put up a fence around me and fence me on my property, unless, I was a murderer or a rapist or someone who deserved to be forcibly isolated in a way like this.
Right.
But if I have a right to get off of my property to access other people's property, it means that when you own property, you also have a right or responsibility not to maintain an easement, but to allow people to pass through at least the parts of your property around the edges so that there can be some kind of fair passage, right? And the government right now is establishing the standard, and a lot of people have a hard time seeing past it. But to me, this is the most exciting thing about what we get to do when we abolish government, is have these kinds of conversations where we develop these standards in a cooperative way, in a free market way, rather than a central planning kind of way. So anyway, on my property, on two sides of my 10-acre square, I have a 30-foot setback, which means I can't build within 30 feet of the edges of my property. I have to allow that to be clear for people who live on property that's further out than me to be able to access it. Okay. So, existing roadways, rights of ways, the government does I don't want to say decent job, but it does a somewhat reasonable job of approximating what the market would provide in a lot of these instances. But obviously, without government, we're going to do a lot better. Okay, third thing, and then we can change subjects here. You mentioned the White House. Can you just walk into the White House and say, I live here? Well, as you know, I announced last week that I am doing another tour this fall for the Love of Freedom, and that it is an exploratory tour for my presidential bid in 2020 on the platform of peacefully abolishing the entire federal government in an orderly manner. And what do we do with the White House? What do we do with the Congress, the Capitol building? Since I'm going to walk in on the very first day with Executive Order X and sign it, immediately declaring the federal government to be of no authority whatsoever, Congress to be disbanded, we are going to turn all of the federally held grounds in the Capitol into a museum. We're going to turn it over to a private committee and preserve it for the sake of history so that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past again. So the White House will eventually be open to tours like never before.
So you could walk in there, you just couldn't sleep there.
Right. In fact, nobody will.
Okay.
Ever again. I take this very seriously. This is not just a fantasy campaign, although there are a lot of really exciting things that you get to do when you abolish the federal government. No more secrets. All of the classified information can come out. All of the patents can be released. There will be no more federal gun control, no more federal taxes. And what we're doing with this campaign is really drawing the line in the sand. Should the federal government of the United States of America continue to exist forever? Or can we do something better? And the answer is yes, we can do something better. We can do freedom by stopping doing this government thing of controlling other human beings with force and violence and control.
Right. And your concept is basically so abolish the federal government and then have everything essentially privatized, right? That's kind of what you're thinking.
As well as this is possible. There is a responsible process of dismantling here. One of the really exciting things that we get to do is give back all of the land. And I'm not just talking about treaties with Native Americans, although that would be a nice start, right? And there are a lot of places where people have specific, legitimate individual claims to land that the federal government has stolen that needs to be returned.
Yeah.
However, on a much bigger scale, you know this, in Western states, the federal government owns something like 50% of the acreage.
Right.
It's insane. You know, this is why, you know, Bundy Ranch, you know, was an issue for people in the West and Western states in general that people on the East Coast largely didn't understand. But when you have the federal government controlling so much of your life because it owns so much of the land around you, that's a real problem. So I don't want to see the federal government disbanded just to have that property turned to the states, right? Because states don't have rights, individuals have rights.
Yeah.
We get to give that property back directly to individuals. This is a basic human birthright to claim land, to have equitable access to natural resources. And to me, the ultimate measure of that is what I'm doing here right now in Arizona, buying a piece of land, setting up a single-family homestead. And what we can do is reclaim that. We can take back all the stolen property that has been stolen by the federal government and return it directly to the people. So I'm open to suggestions here. I know that the objective is to stop the crime of theft and violence and progress that is the federal government and return the stolen property to those whom it has been stolen from. There's not going to be a perfect solution. I admit this. In fact, I don't even know that this is how it's going to turn out. Some people think that by the time I'm elected, and it might not be 2020, it might be 2024, it might be 28, I will run until I win or the federal government collapses on its own, but that it might collapse on its own before this because enough people have realized it is illegitimate and we should stop paying taxes. We should stop giving our consent to this Leviathan, that we should withdraw our consent and live more free. And that's an important part of this campaign, that it's not just about me and my plan. It's really more about you and what you do with this message right now to live more free, to respect your own will, to break out of the expectations that everybody else has for you. And with taking the government apart, there's so many things that we've been conditioned to be afraid of. You know, what about this? What about that? Hey, what about all the awesome freedom and prosperity and joy that we're going to be experiencing? What about not having guns pointed at us just for not paying taxes, for not submitting to the theft? What about not being raided by federal agencies for violations of silly workplace code? You know, what about being able to reclaim that birthright and enrich every single person who wants to claim that? Yeah. I mean, it's just, there's so many benefits to this. It is unreal, and we are now drawing a line in the sand. We're asking people to stand with us in this and help develop the campaign. We're doing a 60-stop tour, 60 stops in 63 days in August, September, October this fall. We're going to be in 60 different cities in all lower 48 this time. So we invite you to come out, and if you are compelled by this message, then please join us in organizing at thefreedomline.com/forums. If you just go to thefreedomline.com, you can find all the information you need about all of this.
Okay, cool. I think one of the things that would be maybe an issue, I don't know, maybe you already have a plan for it, but like what would be the accountability for, I don't know, let's say like there's a really big corporation like Google, for example, that starts trying to control things and tell people what to do in the absence of government. You know, like how do we match them on their level of power? You know, and
yeah. How do you prevent corporations from becoming government, essentially? Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, we don't, as people who believe in freedom, we don't particularly care if you enrich yourself exponentially, if you become economically powerful in a justified way because you're serving people and meeting people's needs.
Right.
What we don't recognize is that the effects of government corporatism are all around us, pervasive, and especially in the age of the internet, although in many ways the internet is providing a challenge to this paradigm. And one of the sad things about the internet is that we didn't get rid of government first.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you've got
Well,
you've got like Facebook. I'm sure you followed that story. Facebook is basically censoring certain content, and Google's doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, and favoring the Clintons, right?
Yeah, especially that, and especially with guns. Just like we found just from our YouTube channel and stuff like that. If you try to share a gun related thing on Facebook, a lot of times it won't have anywhere near the reach as some other random picture. Like you could take a picture of, like, for example, the Hickok 45 Facebook page has like almost 500,000 likes on it. You could take a picture of an outlet on the wall, and it might get several thousand likes. Mm-hmm. But if you put up a picture of a gun or a video of a gun, the reach might be like 5% of that.
Yeah. Well, how do you think it works when you're saying that we should abolish the entire federal government? They don't really like that either. And the reason is because they know where their bread is buttered. They know how corporatism works. And I love Google. I love Google products.
It's a great tool.
They do. Right. I love how they're pushing humanity forward. However, if it wasn't for government, they wouldn't have that corporate advantage in the first place that allows them to control so many resources. And one of the things that we really don't think about, I mean, Bernie Sanders talks about, corporate advantage, blah, blah, blah. We talk about banks and money. But in the age of the internet, there's one other issue that is so important to understand as underpinning this entire system. And we see it going away, but it's still present with these major tech companies, with like Facebook and Google, and that's intellectual property. You have to understand first, and this is in the book, if you want a better explanation than the one right off the top of my head, there's a 2-page version in Freedom, free at thefreedomline.com. And I'll tell you right now, for me, this was not the easiest issue to wrap my head around. And I took 10 years to wake up, from saying, I'm a libertarian because being a Republican and Democrat is lame when they told me that I had to choose one in high school, to understanding it. 10 years. It took me 10 years. Read Rothbard, Ethics of Liberty. That totally changed my worldview. But intellectual property is a racket. Intellectual property is a scam. You do not own ideas. It is contrary to the concept of self-ownership to own an idea, because to own an idea is actually a false claim to be able to control someone else's real physical property. And the reason this is so important in the tech age, talking about Facebook and Google, is that what the internet has done is accelerated competition. If one business, like, right now, there's like Instagram. I'm on Instagram. And they just announced that they're changing their algorithm to, how the pictures are presented based on what you're more likely to engage with rather than the direct, so it's like a Facebook timeline instead of Twitter. It used to be more like Twitter, where everything is in reverse chronological order and there's no favoritism. Now, you should be able to choose, right? Why can't you have Instagram and a picture feed from all your friends with, chronological order and then one with prioritized order? Well, the reason is the intellectual property and the centralization of these servers. If we didn't have the intellectual property, Facebook would have died to competitors a long time ago, because you would have had open source social networking. The code would have been out there. It all would have been publicly available. Right. Facebook would not have been able to claim it as a proprietary piece of intellectual property, and therefore you would have had real competition. You would have had someone coming up the very next day, hey, we're just like Facebook, except that we don't let the government spy on you, and we have standards, for censorship that are based on user demand rather than some centrally planned, politically correct concept of someone who wants to tilt this election in favor of Hillary Clinton.
Right. One thing.
By the way, you can click over with one click and have all of your data there and all of your connections there. But you can't do that because government prevents you from competing with Facebook.
Right. Well, one thing I would say, like, about intellectual property, I get that it's a little, like, the world is changing. When it comes to music, it's like, I get it. If you're an artist, there's no motivation to put out great songs if you're not making money somehow. But where music is just, once it's out there, it's just out there. So, like, they got to find, I'm saying, like, artists have to find, I think, new ways, to make money off of their music, because you can't control it. Once it's out there, it's out there. People can copy it, send it, do what they want. One of my issues would be when it comes to intellectual property is people basically imitating your brand, right? Like, that's where I think that sometimes trademarking and things like that are important, because, like, we've had people do this before with Hickok 45, is they'll imitate our brand and pretend to be us and make money being us when they've done literally nothing of their own. They're just pretending to be us, and there's got to be a way to stop that.
That only works. I mean, how are they making money, though? They're only making money on something that's based on intellectual property in the first place. If they're making money from your brand, they're using it unjustly anyway. Without intellectual property, your brand is actually more valuable because it's connected to a source of legitimate service being provided, of an information service.
Right.
In a sense, imitation is the best form of flattery, and if it was a free market, this wouldn't be a problem. We would encourage it.
But,
we're getting close enough to that that's what I do. Tell people to rip my book, put their name on the cover. I don't care.
Well, I mean, like, what if someone downloads a bunch of Beatles music and then imitates people don't buy CDs anymore, but let's say they did, and then made a CD that looks just like a legitimate Beatles CD, and then started selling them and making money. So they didn't work hard to, and spend money on all the equipment and touring for years to develop that.
Hold on. Already your question is based on the premise of intellectual property, because if there was no intellectual property, why would you buy a CD in the first place?
Oh, yeah,
why
that's
would
true.
You pay for music at all?
That's true.
And a lot of us, like, we have been raised in a culture that is heavily pervaded by intellectual property, and that everyone is touched by it, not just in all the things around them, but in how they think of their own lives. I mean, every kid in America is told, yeah, if you invent something, you can get it patented and you can make $1 million. And now there's this idea lottery, and if you come up with the best song and it becomes a hit and you wrote it and you have your credit, every time it plays, you're going to get a nickel. And we've been taught that that's how to be compensated for things, that we should be, that we should try to sequester our ideas and use the violence of government to interfere with the free flow of ideas. And it really takes, and I hear what you're going through, and as you're asking these questions, I mean, this is what I went through, and it took me a few months of, like, reading and research and having to really be like, no, but what about this? What about this? And I had to have, all the airtight answers and reasoning. But instinctively that intellectual property is wrong, that it's unethical, because it's claiming, because I have this idea, I can control what you do with your property. But that that's wrong. And while you're right in pointing out that, there may be a necessary transition out of this, as we see, it's going to be, and you're conditioned to only see the downside of that. Well, how is an artist going to make money for this? How are they going to pay for that? Well, your failure to see how a peaceful society will work is not an excuse for you to be violent. And the more people get this, I mean, I am really excited about how.
Well, but, like, what would be like the motivation to invent something great, right? Like, to me, that money is what motivates people to come up with great ideas. Well, like, maybe a lot of things, but
was nothing invented before government? I mean, did people not invent, like, fire and the wheel and cooking and
but it was still for some
music.
Kind of resources. You know what I mean? Like, you might, if you're going back that far, you might invent something just so you can survive. And then once surviving wasn't hard, you might invent something just so you can get, whatever, the mate that you want, or a little more food, or, you want people to bring you, fresh deer meat because you figured out this new way to do something or whatever. So your life should be a little easier,
Exactly. But the reason they support you is not because, hey, that's the guy who invented the wheel, that was cool. Or, it's because wow, that guy's a valued member of our community who contributes.
Right.
That's someone that we want to support. And actually right now, again, in the age of the internet, we see the problem solving itself and creating a way better model with crowdfunding. Instead of, I invented an idea, now let me get a government patent and build a company around this that's based on preventing people from using my idea, so I'm the only one who profits from it. Let me make as many people profit from it as possible by sharing it freely and asking them to support me in making the next idea. And that's what is really cool about this, is that it shifts the focus from the last idea to the next idea and creating new incentives to do that. And like I said, already this is shifting. If you think about, even in the age of the record industry, dying at this point, but if you want to succeed in music, you don't go send a demo tape to a record company anymore. You start a YouTube channel.
It's true, yeah.
You get your content out there for free. You build a fan base and a following of people who say, yeah, if this guy puts out another album or gets a record deal and puts out an album, I will buy it. Although now that's even changing to a much more free form, which is, if this, hey, here's my free music. I've been making music for years. Now I want to make a really good studio album. Can you guys fund it because you value this?
Right.
This is, yes, it's making production more competitive. Yes, we should act like you're saying, hey, it's going to, what's the incentive? There are still incentives for music producers to find. There is still value to be provided. There are still people willing to pay for value. But the value provided is going to be so much more. The consumer is so much happier when people are put in situations as producers where they have to compete. They have to give stuff away. That's what we're coming to. So I'm not worried about, the guy who goes, oh, well, I can sing and play guitar, so I'm going to be a billionaire because I'm going to get signed to a record deal and I'm going to, make tons of money. No, I don't. Do I care about incentivizing him? No. I want to incentivize the person who says, I love making music, and I'm so good at making music that I can give it away for free, and people will support me doing that. I want to live in a world of music producers like that, because if you had intellectual property, the alternative is that you get a world of music producers like Justin Bieber and Britney Spears and Celine Dion. And, I'm so out of touch now. I'm not even naming all probably the most offensive, worst cookie-cutter pop stars. But you see what I'm getting at, right? Every song used to be a folk song, used to be, public intellectual property. It's only with the sequestration of data, of knowledge, of ideas that you get these perverted concepts, these perverted industries. I mean, look at the music industry. Everybody complains, oh, well, it's all centralized. Well, it's all turned to crap. Well, it's all homogenized, pop, whatever. And the source of the problem is really obvious.
Yeah.
Intellectual property. Where's the gun in the room? It's pointing a gun at people for copying data.
And I think, like you said, I think the internet's doing a pretty good job of pushing it back. I still think branding is important, just because if you come up with an idea, if someone copies it immediately, it's like, well, you're never going to make a dime off of it. But I do think there's a balance somewhere, with that. Like with entertainers, no one can copy what they look like and their talent, so they can still hit the road and sell out shows and do all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
But I think if you do have, I think it definitely varies based on what you have, whether it's music or whatever, it's a product. Like if you invent, some better light bulb that has some kind of technology in it. I mean, like for example, Elon Musk has been open sourcing, his designs and stuff for the electric car, which I think is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still going to make money off of that car because people think that's really cool. So I think there's a balance somewhere where you can open source stuff, but yet still be rewarded for your great idea. You know what I mean? I think there's a balance there for that.
I think if you give away your ideas, if you give away what you can, you will end up being rewarded better than in this day and age. Without the force of government being as relevant as it was in sequestering ideas, I think with the internet we have finally turned a corner where, for most people, the idea of sharing their information products freely is better for them.
Yeah.
That's so cool how that's happened right now. And I've adopted this perspective for myself. You know, a lot of people suggest, Adam, you should make exclusive content for your Patreon, you know, patrons who pay you monthly to provide content. It's like, no, the people who sponsor me by donating every month want me to get this message out to as many people as possible. They don't want me to entertain them.
Yeah, it's a little private show, yeah.
Yeah, and so we're going on tour. You know, we're going out to meet people and giving them that personal experience. That's how, you know, how I'm bringing in at least the funding that I need for my organization.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is like a beautiful part of, you know, where we live today, what we're living through right now. This incredible transition that humanity is experiencing.
Yeah, crowdfunding is a really cool thing. I mean, there's some guys, I don't know if you know them, but they're veterans. They have a YouTube channel. They do a lot of like veteran-based comedy stuff. Matt Best, you know those guys? They do like T-shirts and stuff. But they crowdfunded a movie, and they raised like, what was it? Almost $2 million. And I think their YouTube channel has like 250 or around 300,000 subscribers, or somewhere in that range. And they were able to raise almost $2 million to do a movie. And they got like William Shatner was in it, you know, and they got a bunch of, you know, decent, you know, mid-level big name actors. And it's amazing. It's awesome, you know, that they were able to do that. And a lot of people have been able to do stuff like that. Like how could that have happened even 10 years ago, you know? It's just so awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just
absolutely.
like the internet is almost like, you know, it's almost taken on a life of its own. It's almost like its own organism, almost in a sense. You know, that's kind of
the hive mind.
Yeah,
the hive mind of humanity.
It's becoming the hive mind is becoming a actual physical thing you can touch, you know, on the internet, and it's amazing. And obviously, it does have some bad things. This reminds me of something else I was going to ask you about too. So, like, you were talking about that transitioning period, how, you know, you feel like you've evolved and everything, and the stuff that you've been interested in and grown and all that. Like, I've gone through that period too in a different way. I used to be like really big into conspiracy theories on the internet, right? And I still think some of them have, you know, some validity. It just depends or whatever. But something that I've learned, you know, over the past, you know, few years. It's like there's so much stuff, there's literally a conspiracy about every possible thing you can even dream up on the internet. And there's just so much noise on there that it's just like I had to just kind of just step away from it and just kind of start trying to look at things in a more, you know, bigger picture and just, you know, just stay away from that. I was wondering, like what do you think about that kind of stuff? Like, I know Alex Jones, you know, gets a lot of crap for, you know, feeding all that kind of stuff. And, you know, there's a lot of other public figures out there that, you know, it's like they cram, you know, conspiracies, you know, down everyone's throat. And I don't know, it seems to me like it does more harm than good in some ways. Like, I don't know.
Absolutely. No, I think what you're getting at is very important. I'm really glad you bring it up because it has been important to my transition as an activist, my evolution. I guess I shouldn't say transition. That sounds really got bad connotation, doesn't it? My evolution as an activist. Yeah, that's
there you go.
That was kind of distracting. What I used to talk about was that, hey, I stopped watching bad cop porn, and you know what I mean by that, right? Bad cop porn. That there's so many videos out there now of cops doing horrendous, evil things to people.
Yeah, you'll never run out of them.
Yeah, that's it right now. You could never run out. It's just like porn on the internet. There's an endless supply, freely available. And if that's what you want to make your life about, you can. You can spend 10 hours a day and not run out of bad cop footage. And it's even worse with conspiracy theories. And I've used some pretty gross metaphors to describe this in the past, but I'll just say, if you're getting stabbed in the back repeatedly, how much does it help you to get out your ruler and go, well, how long is this knife? How far into my back is it going? Is the blade serrated properly or not? Because this blade really could be a lot sharper, and maybe it wouldn't hurt so much. Or, maybe if the guy stabbing me in the back, is he strong? I want to know, is he using his full force to stab me in the back?
Yeah.
And you're like, wait, this is insane. Like, if someone was getting stabbed in the back, like you saw someone getting stabbed in the back and they were just sitting there calmly going, well, gee, I wonder how long the blade is. Oh, gee, that kind of hurts, doesn't it? Yeah, that hurts. You'd be screaming at them. Hey, you're getting stabbed. Get up, do something, fight back. And if you're studying conspiracy theories all day long, if you're watching bad cop porn, if you're playing politics, if you're talking about shootings, hey, you see what you're doing here in the metaphor, right? I mean, it's not hard to figure out that that's not helping. That doesn't do anything about it. Sure, you can say that learning about how it's happened in the past will stop you from or help you prevent it from happening again in the future. But most of these people who are the conspiracy theory types, and I'm not trying to, debate the merits, because, conspiracies happen. Conspiracy theorists, I'll tell you, just broad generalities, they're generally right. Yes, people work together in secret to screw over other people. No kidding. Conspiracies are real. But if you spend all of your time on that, you're missing the point, and it's counterproductive, and it's harmful.
It's like that term, the devil's in the details. You know what I mean? I feel like that's what it refers to. If you're spending too much time on the details of the situation, you're missing what it's really about, or what the real meaning of it is.
Yeah.
I think to an extent. One of the, it's funny, I don't know if you've seen this video or not, but one of the things that kind of opened up my eyes a little bit, ironically, was somebody made this great video on YouTube. The documentary Loose Change about 9/11?
Yes, of course.
Okay,
I watched it when I was waking up. It was very, very important for me.
Yeah, I've seen it. It's an interesting documentary. But someone made a documentary called Luke's Change, like Luke Skywalker, and it was basically about how it was a joke, and they were trying to show that there was a conspiracy like that. Blowing up the Death Star was like an inside job.
Really blown up from the inside.
Yeah, and it was like this whole thing or whatever. And then it kind of made me go, like, it was funny. It was meant to be funny, obviously, but it also had a deeper meaning that it kind of made me go, it is pretty easy to make almost anything look how you want with clever editing and video and all that kind of stuff. So it really kind of made me start scrutinizing conspiracy videos a little bit more. And I kind of came to a place where, there's some that I don't believe at all. There's some that I maybe believe 90%, and there's some in the middle. But it's so easy to manipulate people with videos, and that's one of the downsides of the internet. I think is just because of that. Because I think sometimes conspiracies can be somewhere in the middle. Like when it comes to 9/11. Like, I try to be honest with myself about what I don't know. Like, I'll theorize. I feel pretty certain that it wasn't just the planes that took the building down. I think there was probably some explosives that helped the buildings come down. Yeah. But beyond that, not really sure,
Yeah. See, that's to me, that's the correct way to look at all of these things, is to just establish, well, what does this say about government? What does it say about my current situation? What does it say about moving forward? And for 9/11, and this is, the granddaddy of all current relevant conspiracies, although it's already kind of losing its significance. I feel like they're kind of giving up on hiding it at this point with the 28 pages. But, all we know for certain about 9/11 as outside observers is that the government story is crap. That it's obviously covering up something deliberately that is, at very least, incredible government incompetence. Beyond that, we can see different theories, and we can assign different probabilities to each one if we really care to. I don't care to. I'd rather get on to more important things than stopping it from happening again.
Right.
If the American people were inoculated against the influence of false flag attacks, and even if 9/11 is exactly how the government said it was, we need to still wake people up to the fact that, killing hundreds of thousands of people in response to a few thousand by a few private actors, is not justified. You can't just guilt by association start killing thousands of people because they're in the same country as someone who once did something bad to you. Just re-embracing that basic standard of ethics and morality and the justice standard that comes from that. So, yeah, 9/11, you look at it, you go, well, dang, we definitely shouldn't be using that as an excuse for all of this other crap that the government is doing, like the surveillance state and and the war on terror and violations of civil liberties and foreign adventurism and, more wars to make the rich richer and the poor die in combat. And I've been through that. I haven't talked about it a lot lately, but I'm an Iraq combat veteran. I saw people die because of that.
Right.
And most importantly, going back to the original, I guess the most important thing that we started this conversation on is, being willing to change.
Yeah.
And, I know this is relevant for everyone. And nobody was born a perfectly ethical person in a perfectly ethical world. We all have some level of compliance, at least, with the evils of the world, and specifically the evils of the American federal government. We all bear some responsibility for that. And for me as a combat vet to come out and say, holy crap, I was wrong. Not only was I wrong, I tortured people because I was wrong. I actually caused individuals unjustified physical pain because government told me to. I helped ruin lives. I helped kill people.
Do you think being able to admit that to yourself helps you deal with it better, and that maybe some of the rampant PTSD is people who experience what you did but yet still try to hang on to the idea that they did what was right?
Yes, absolutely. And that is so important. I'm really glad you mentioned that because I know you have a lot of veterans in your audience. And if there are any listening right now, you got to have the guts, the intellectual integrity and fortitude to look at reality objectively, even when it hurts, even when it means admitting that you were wrong, even when it means admitting that you were lied to and suckered and taken advantage of. And the veterans who survive what they're dealing with in PTSD are the ones who are able to talk about it and come to terms with it. And I guarantee if you talk about it openly, you will never come to the conclusion, oh, yeah, it was really a good thing that war happened for humanity.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to admit that you had some role in that. And you can say, and maybe it's important to acknowledge, that it was well-intentioned. It doesn't change the fact that it was naive.
Right.
That it was wrong. And facing up to that and acknowledging that, at least for me, was a critical first step in my recovery and dealing with PTSD. I was in Fallujah in 2004 with the civil affairs team, and I never fired a weapon in combat, but I was shot at a lot, mainly because I was a driver for most of the time. And in civil affairs, we were largely used as bait by the infantry, not, super strike forces.
Yeah.
I ran a checkpoint on the Brooklyn Bridge, which was the northern bridge over the Euphrates next to Fallujah, right on the edge of the city where the 4 Blackwater contractors were sprung up and burned. So, I was in it. I saw people die I saw Iraqis die. I saw American Marines die.
Yeah.
And when you experience that, it seems like it's difficult to bring it out and to deal with it and to process it properly. But to process it properly has to include an element of ethics and responsibility for your own actions. So when you can do that, you're going to come out in a much better place as opposed to where you're struggling, if you're struggling with this now, because you're burying part of it or denying part of it or just suppressing it in a way that makes it worse. And really, PTSD is having things rattling around in your subconscious mind that control you in ways that subvert your will, that are against what you really want to do with your life. And by talk therapy, whatever it was, for whatever it is for you, for me it was my activism and speaking out against the war. But whatever it is for you, you get to take those ideas that are rattling around in your subconscious, those memories, those traumatic experiences, and you put them front and center in your conscious mind, and then you control them instead of them controlling you.
Yeah.
And that's a really important part of this process. And if you don't address the ethical responsibility or the moral responsibility that you bear for whatever it was that you did, then that will always be rattling around in your subconscious, and that is what will eat at you, and that is what I think is behind, at very least, a large majority of the veteran suicides, and it's that failure to acknowledge the complicity. And until you do that, you can't forgive yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what will kill you.
Well, a friend of mine who's also a Marine in Fallujah and has been on this podcast made a good point. I thought when he was talking about PTSD, he doesn't like that it's considered a disorder, because what he says is it's a very natural human reaction to seeing horrific things. It's how you're supposed to respond when you see what you've seen, you know.
A sane response to an insane situation.
Yeah. I thought that, you know, that made a lot of sense to me. And I think with anything, truth is definitely a better medicine than denial. That's for sure. Because to me, denial is like when you deny something, it's like you've almost given yourself like a to-do list, if that makes any sense. It's like you've got, you know, when you're denying something that's just, eventually you're going to have to face it, and you're going to have to figure a way to work it out. And it's just always there, just gnawing at you.
Yeah.
So you just got to...
It's like piling up a debt, like piling up a to-do list.
Yeah, exactly. And then when you find the truth, then it's like you can kind of be done with it. And when it comes back up, then it's like, oh, well, I already figured that out. So I'll just think about it and remind myself that I figured it out, and then I'll move on, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And it's the difference between a veteran saying, I'm angry and I'm frustrated and I have all these things, I don't know what to do, and I can't deal with it, and I might just end it and bail on this whole thing.
Yeah.
As opposed to, I did some messed up stuff, and it was really bad, and I understand why I did it, and it was wrong, and I've acknowledged that, and I forgive myself.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Well, before we wrap this up, I wanted to ask about something that's not quite so somber, but it's like I was curious about like how you feel about like materialism in a sense, and what I mean is like not just the broad term, but like with this like these houses, these small, you know, eco-friendly houses and stuff that you've been building. Like, do you think that, like, what's the balance of, you know, do you feel like it's wrong if someone is successful, if they want to have like a, you know, like a big, you know, lavish house? Do you feel like that's just always wrong? Or, you know, should people live more modestly? Or like, what do you think there's a balance there, or what?
Well, as a voluntarist first, as an ethical person first, what you do with your property that you earn legitimately is none of my business, in the sense that I should have no say in how you control those funds. Those are yours. Your ownership of that in my ethical system is unquestionable. That being said, I can voice my opinions on whether I think what you're doing is smart, effective, something that I want to support, and whether I think it's in the best interest of your own happiness.
Right.
But I'm not going to judge people for that. What I'm going to do is present my approach to materialism, and that's such a loaded, charged word that begs definition. I don't think it's even worth getting into.
Yeah.
But to address what you said specifically, my approach is that you determine what you need to be happy and healthy and safe and secure. And that might be a big house. That might be certain luxuries that make you happier, that enrich your life. Nothing makes you happy except your own decision to be happy, of course. But If you need certain things to be healthy and you have a standard for that, that's for you to determine, not for anybody else. For security, again, your decision. That might mean a really big rainy day fund. That might mean a bank account with a big balance. For me, I'd rather invest in reputation capital. I'd rather save Bitcoin and metals than dollars. I'd rather own land and physical property than stuff that people can take away. But once you've got that, when I say people, I mean government, the main thieves in society that can get to your bank account and put liens on things, right?
Yeah.
But they can't steal your reputation. They can't really take your health.
Yeah, that's true.
So for me, and this is very subjective, it's kind of nebulous, but I know what I need to be happy and healthy and safe and secure. And anything I get more than that, I'm going to give back. I'm going to donate, I'm going to share, or I'm going to invest in a business that is providing goods and services that other people want to consume. And what that is a smarter economic strategy than piling up money.
Right.
To say I'm gonna have a huge bank account, I'm gonna have a big savings, I'm gonna have I'm gonna have a bunker full of gold bricks. Okay, fine. That's what you think you need, fine. I would make the case, however, that not only is your world better by sharing that wealth, that is past your point of diminishing returns. This is not in any way a challenge to capitalism. In fact, this is a better application of capitalism. If you have diminishing returns on your life and your happiness by pulling in more resources to yourself, those resources are better invested in security of you always having what you want by giving them away in one form or another. And I include investment in this, obviously, because if you're investing in a new company, you're helping someone create something that is going to serve other people and provide a return on that value. But the point isn't to pile it up. The point is to invest it more.
Do something with it.
Because, what?
Yeah, do something with it.
Well, if you are a source of value and generosity and productivity for people around you and the rest of the world will conspire. And I could put this in crude capitalistic terms too. Reciprocity, reputation capital, things like that. The world will conspire to ensure that you always have what you need to be healthy, happy, safe, and secure. And that's what we really want.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's pretty similar to kind of how I feel about it. In simplistic terms, I always kind of look at life as, a chance to kind of, try to make the world a better place subjectively as I see it, and also just do some cool stuff along the way, So it's kind of like a balance. If having a big house, it makes you happy because it's cool and it's an experiment and it's an exploration, then I think it can probably be a good thing. But I think if you have a big house because you care about how your identity and how you appear to other people and status and that kind of stuff, then I think maybe it's for the wrong reasons. And that's something I've thought about some lately because I've seen something I was watching on Netflix. There was some guy that was some big Hollywood producer and had this like mansion in Beverly Hills and all this, and then he talked about how he just kind of like saw the light and thought it was wrong and sold it all and and started living like more simply and traveling the world and doing all this kind of stuff. And it's like that seems pretty cool, but I don't necessarily think that it's bad to have a big house if that's if you think it's fun. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the most that we can criticize anyone for anything like that is, hey, that might be a malinvestment. That might not be something that you want to do that's actually in your best interest of happiness.
Yeah.
But I think most importantly, we agree that that's for you to decide. And again, to bring it back to how I started this, if we are voluntarists because we respect self-ownership, because we respect property rights, then those decisions are really deeply personal ones that should be respected as with anybody's property in general.
Well, like, or we could use like Joe Rogan. I think is a good example. Like he's got a big ass house, up in a pretty high rent area, from what I've told. But he does so many cool things for people. He makes people happy. Like his podcast. I love his podcast. You know what I mean? He reaches a lot of people with a very positive message with his podcast, with his comedy. I actually saw him when he came through Nashville. It was an amazing show. And so it's like with a guy like that, it's like there might be some people that would sit around and be like, oh, look at that house he has, and look down on him for it. But I mean, he has a great balance, I think, of him giving back to the world. So I don't think it's bad for someone like him to have cool stuff like that. But
yeah, absolutely. And what we should really be aspiring to is for everybody to have cool stuff like that. But that's not a trade-off.
Yeah, and technology, I think, can give us that eventually. I think technology allows everyone's standard of living to just increase. Because you think about like poor people in America in 2016 versus poor people in America in 1816. Pretty different, so who knows, maybe poor people in, 2116 in America will have what the middle class has now, or maybe, it'll be a totally different landscape.
Oh, that's for sure.
A lot can happen in 100 years, that's for sure.
Change is the one constant.
Yeah, it sure is. You try to deny that, then you're just gonna not be too happy about life. That's for sure. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on and doing this. I know you're busy and always doing a lot of stuff, moving around a lot. So I appreciate it.
Well, my pleasure as always. I hope to see you again. We come through on the tour. We got an event in Nashville.
Yeah, I'm gonna come check that out as long as I don't have something. But maybe we can get together then and do something. Excellent.
Yes, absolutely. So thefreedomline.com is the main website. You can find everything there, including the calendar. You go to the /calendar part of the website. Just click on the calendar button. You'll see all of our tour dates coming up.
I think it was September 18th, I think it wasn't it, that you're coming to Nashville?
I think so.
Something like that.
We're doing, like I said, 60 stops in 63 days, so it's a pretty intense national tour. And, if you like what I have to say, this is a line in the sand. If you think this is important, come and support the abolition of the federal government. If you think the federal government is necessary to your safety and security, come and protest me. We'll have a good time with this. Let's, elevate the conversation to something a little more important than the personality cult politics and the kind of, bullcrap pandering that we see all over the news and that has defined this election cycle. So
you're inviting hecklers is what you're saying.
Absolutely. As always, looking for a vibrant conversation that challenges paradigms and wakes people up. That's what my activism is all about. So thefreedomline.com, if you're ready to start organizing for Kokesh 2020 and the abolition of the entire federal government, go to the forums, sign up. We need county coordinators. We need people in our national teams. We are recruiting right now, so let's make this happen. We are poised at a unique, historic opportunity, and as Thomas Jefferson said, we should have a revolution with every generation. And not only are we way behind in this, but we stand as a generation now uniquely poised to bring about what may be the most important event in human history since the invention of fire and the wheel, and that is that we will be known as the generation who wielded the internet and brought down government. We decided once and for all that this idea of violently controlling each other was not in the best interest of humanity, that we respect individual rights, and that we can take government apart from the top down. So by growing a movement from the bottom up of people who want to live free and live differently and withdraw our consent. So that's my pitch. If you want to understand the whole message behind it, the book is free at thefreedomline.com, 100 pages, free audio book. Please check it out. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your audience today, John.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was a lot of fun. Well, I'll talk to you later, man. Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Excellent.
All right, man. See you. All right, you still there?
Yep.
Okay. Sometimes I did a show with someone like this, and they just like hung up. And I was like, well, I didn't. I was like, I just meant for the show. I didn't mean really,
Yeah. No, you know me. I know better.
Yeah, that's right. You're a pro at this stuff.